Conservancy, I would ask for a roll call to establish a quorum.
Absolutely. Good morning, all. Supervisor, Chair Hume,
Here.
Vice Chair Winternitz. Supervisor Burgess. Saw her.
She's up there.
She's up there.
She must have gotten coffee.
We'll come back to her.
No, just.
Supervisor Mashburn.
Here. Physically.
Supervisor Ding. She's there, good. Supervisor Ding. Supervisor Provenza, no. Board Member Pearl.
Present.
Board Member Sandoval, welcome.
Here, thank you.
Board Member Udang.
Here. Thank you.
And Board Member Matsumoto. I understand maybe,
She's going to be here. She's about 10 minutes late, stuck in traffic.
okay, I'll note that. Do we have any ex officio members, Senator Daughter, Assembly Member Grayson? No? Oh, I'm sorry. Hi, Leo. We do have you on there.
Yeah, good morning. I'm here virtually.
Good. You look a little different personally. Do we have any liaison advisors with us today? Marge and, yeah, we'll get you in a minute. Present in person? Liaison advisors with us. I also noticed, Sheila, that you are soon to be a representative with us, hopefully with YOLO, but not yet.
Yeah, no voting yet, but I'm so happy to be here and learn. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, welcome. And I see Steve Chappelle is here visiting. Nice to see you. Okay, is there everyone else recorded? Thank you. We are good. We have a
Circle
quorum.
Back to Supervisor Burgess.
Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor Burgess. She is up there as an SB. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 6 without Diane.
I'm here, sorry.
I hope that coffee was worth it.
It's
There we
running
go.
down the hallway.
Okay, so we have 7 voting members here. We have a quorum.
Okay, great. Would you please address the flag and join me in the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now I will kick it over to our Executive Director for an introduction of new member.
I introduce Gloria Sandoval, who is the Deputy Secretary for Access at the California Natural Resources Agency. Delighted to have you and welcome aboard.
Thank you for the nice welcome. I'm fairly new with the Natural Resources Agency, and I'm like it was stated, I'm the new Deputy Secretary for Access, and I'm really looking forward to working with all of you and advancing in outdoors for all. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Okay, that brings us on to item number 3, which is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there any member of the public wishing to comment on an item before the agency? Seeing and hearing none, dispense with that, move on to the consent calendar. I did have a question about the minutes, not reflecting agenda item 14. Chance to research that.
It is an error and omission. We will make that correction. So I think we could probably approve them with the expectation of an added note.
Okay.
And also a note that I had Marge Kohler as teleconference last meeting and she was in person. I will adjust those notes.
Okay.
I do the note.
Any other
I apologize
corrections
for
or
that.
additions or items that somebody would have a discussion about? Is there a motion to approve the consent?
Move approval.
Motion from Director Mashburn. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, who
Yeah,
got
motion
that
and a
one?
second. All
Oh,
those in
who was
favor
first?
say-
I'm sorry.
We need to do a roll call since we're.
We do. Okay, so we're gonna have Lillian as a second. Sorry, I was looking that way. Yeah, we have to do a roll call for all. Supervisor Hume.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Chair Hume.
Yeah, aye.
Yes. Vice Chair Winternitz,
Yes,
Supervisor Burgess,
Yes.
Supervisor Mashburn,
Aye.
absent, Board Member Pearl.
Aye.
Board Member Sandoval.
Aye.
Board Member Udine.
Aye.
And we have absent, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 ayes. It motion carries.
Okay, great. That brings us to item number 5, the executive officer's report. Mr. Ingram.
And welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. Excuse me. Just want to note that this is our last board meeting of 2024. So our next board meeting will be January 22nd, 2025. I am hoping that we wrap up by 11. I will need to leave right at 11 to get to a Delta tour with that's sponsored by the Stewardship Council for Assemblywoman Diane Papan, who's the chief of the Water Parks and Wildlife Committee. So a great opportunity to be able to take her out and expose her to the Delta. If we're not done, Karen will take over and I will just duck out. All right, so I'm going to try to skip through and hit the highlights here. Please feel free to ask questions at any point. Starting with the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program, we continue to track the last 3 sites that continue to operate. And we are sharing the analysis of the DRIP with interested parties throughout, around and about. So on September 25th, we provided the results to the Delta Measures Experimentation Consortium, which is run by the Office of Delta Water Master. And then we have upcoming presentations to the State Water Board and to the California Department of Food and Agriculture. Just sharing the results of that program. Moving on to the fiscal year budget update, there's really not a lot to update here. We were requested to reduce our budget by 7.95%. We went through the drill of trying to calculate what that would look like, and it left us with almost no cushion. So we requested a waiver. We are answering Department of Finance's questions, and we don't have any final resolution of that issue, but we're expecting that sometime soon. Administrative updates. We did complete our consolidated annual CAR report, which is just documents the amount of business we do with small business and disabled veterans business enterprises. We unfortunately did not meet our disabled veteran business enterprise participation goal. I'm sorry, we met the disabled veteran goal, but not the small business goal. It's very challenging for an organization our size. There's very little contracting. We've met it in the past, and we will focus and continue to strive to meet that. One other note there, we did migrate all of our electronic folders from our share drive onto a cloud-based system that just provides better access for our team and more secure access. So we're very happy to have done that. Thank you to Hope for all of her effort on making that happen. Next item, the Conservancy request for proposals for the Franks Tract feasibility analysis for restoration of Franks Tract. That saga continues. We're trying to get A&E authority. We're going through the rulemaking process to establish that. It's taking time, and we're hoping that early next year we will have that authority. We can refly that RFP, get that contract underway, get that planning effort underway. Next section is grant applications. In July, we shared with you all the work that staff has put into multiple grant applications. We have not heard back from any, which is not unexpected. We anticipate hearing back from most by the end of the year, with the exception of the Clean Vessel Act program, which we should hear back soon. So all total, there's a little over just about $30 million there that we're trying to bring in for additional funding. Nutria eradication, you have the latest numbers there within the packet, but also we're going to have a presentation under agenda item 11. Valerie Cook from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, who heads that program, will come in and talk a little more specifically about exactly where we are in the fight against the Nutria and what's going on in the Delta. Moving on to Delta Science. The Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee Restoration Subcommittee is having our next meeting on November 13th. It's going to be a series of site visits to explore restoration potential in the South Delta. And it's being co-facilitated with Restore the Delta in an effort to highlight restoration needs in the South Delta that are supported by, so that should be an interesting event. The Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team that had their third quarterly meeting in August. The team heard Group of talks focus on identification of species that are potential future invaders of the Delta to help train team members for early detection. And Dr. Rachel Wigginton helped coordinate that meeting, but also gave a lecture on early detection and rapid response at the UC Davis Weed Research Information Center, Aquatic Weed School. Team. And then also on September 19th, we attended the Suisun Resource Conservation District Fall Landowner Workshop, where Dr. Wigginton presented on the role of connectivity in early detection of aquatic weed. That was really in response to, I think, Supervisor Mashburn's request that we do get out there with more of the invasive species message about what we're doing and what local people and interests can do to be aware of invasive species and then what to do when they see them. Moving on to Delta Science Outreach, you'll see there that the Conservancy presented several posters, 4 posters at the Bay Delta Science Conference. Those posters are actually posted on the back wall if you'd like to check them out. Very beautiful posters and rich, full of information about all the work that we do. And so please do take a minute to check them out. We also did a special oral session on Delta carbon farming. That was organized and facilitated by Laura Damon at the end of the table, our program manager. And that was very well received and a great opportunity to share the information about everything that's going on in the Delta relative to subsidence and carbon management. I want to mention that Coast Cleanup Day was a roaring success as usual. We met on September 21st down on Sherman Island and worked with the Rio Vista Wind Sport Association. I think there were over 30 volunteers.
Close to 50.
Close to 50
Yeah.
volunteers. And they filled a full 40-yard dumpster completely with things collected along the river there. The dumpster was donated by Waste Management, and then we also staffed another site at the Rio Vista Sandy Beach just south of Rio Vista. There are a number of media mentions there. I won't go over them, but if anybody has any questions, happy to answer them. We had no board directives last meeting, and I'm going to skip to correspondence really quickly before we go to budget, just so I guess. You'll just see that on September 19th, we did receive a public records request for the Franks Tack analysis feasibility RFP. We provided the information that was requested and let them know that we would be applying the RFP. So that concludes the program side of the Executive Officer's report. Happy to take any questions now.
Any questions for the Executive Officer?
I have a comment to make.
Vice Chair.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to commend Delta Conservancy staff for applying for those various grants they have applied for to bring money in to continue the programs to help the Delta community. I know it's a lot of work, but that's what we're here to do, really. So I applaud them for that, and also for their, I think, significant contributions to the Delta Science program. The various work efforts that they've done and the posters and the presentations are what we need to understand better the Delta and the Bay Estuary, and their involvement, I think, is great. So just want to say that.
Very much.
Thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments? I did have one.
Okay.
What is pollutoculture?
It is actually a term used for wet farming. So it can be anything, rice is pollutoculture. Growing water buffalo on agricultural land for mozzarella cheese is pollutoculture. So anything that's wet.
Okay. Thank you.
And before we turn it over, I just wanted to turn it over to Jessica for budget.
Okay, I'm Jessica Adel and the Administration Supervisor for the Conservancy. I'm going to report very briefly on Agenda Item 5.2, our Budget and Expenditure Report for the month of July. And the reason it's only for the month of July is, as everyone knows, July 1st, the budget comes out for the state, but as the accounting portion of it, the fiscal budget and fiscal didn't even enter the system until late August. So we could not enter anything till late August, which is the latest since I've been here. And we get reports on this and only reports we have so far is for July. So our expenditures are for salaries only for the month of July. It's not a very robust look at this point. The Conservancy budget, though, is somewhat complete. The budget season starts, they give us the budget in July, but we have budget drills all through fall. And those drills are starting up the 25-26 budget, but also they do all the adjustments for the 24-25 budget, which is now. So though we got some salary increases, they don't give us the money for it until now. So any monies that we got for increases, we'll be getting during this budget drill season, which should end end of maybe mid-November. So the next budget that you see will have a little more money in it for us, hopefully, and it'll look a little different. Just running through the budget since we're starting a new year, our operating expenses are on line items 1 through 18. Obviously, most of it is salaries. We're operating at, I think 81% is salary and the rest is for our facilities and other items. Items 19 through 24 are multi-year appropriations. For a program, some of the program monies we get the budget for it, but we have to make the budget last throughout the terms of the project. So this multi-year money will save some of that for future years, but we do have it available if needed. That is all I have. Is there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Real
Yeah.
quick, on the nature-based solutions
Yep.
car, what's that breakdown between the two?
Between the two, the car is very small. So I would say
Most
the
of that
car's
is nature-
around 5.
Most of it's nature-based. Okay.
Yes, almost all of it is nature-based solution.
Any other questions on the
lines.
budget? Okay. Does that complete the report?
That concludes my report.
Okay, great, thank you. On to item number 6, then the Ecosystem Restoration and Climate Adaptation Grant Program update.
Hey, good morning, board members. My name is Angie Shakya. I'm an environmental scientist here at Delta Conservancy. Today I'll be presenting agenda item 6, the Ecosystem Restoration and Climate Adaptation, or ERICA, grant program update. This can be found starting on page 21 of the report tab. On the bottom of the page here, you'll see a breakdown of the different funding sources that make up the ERICA grant program, along with their funding availability. So these include Proposition 1, CAR, which is Climate Access and Restoration, and nature-based solutions. And each of these grant programs have only a small amount of funding remaining for amendments and various estimated changes. So the ERICA program now has 18 active projects, and detailed updates for all of those can be found on pages 22 through 30 of the board packet. And to provide a few highlights, the Nature-Based Solutions Delta Rice Conversion Program has executed contracts with landowners and enrolled 2,700 acres, which will be converted to rice by spring of next year. And then next, the Wetland Restoration Project on Staten Island, which will convert over 400 acres of existing corn to wetlands on a portion of Staten Island, is conducting tribal outreach. So Delta Conservancy staff and staff from the Nature Conservancy have scheduled meetings with tribal representatives about access and project design. So to wrap up, the ERICA program now has a total of 21 closed grants. And on page 38 is a project summary for the now closed Mellow Jensen Ayers Sandhill Crane Preserve Acquisition. And under this grant, Agricultural Natural Resources Trust acquired a conservation easement to safeguard 275 acres of crucial sandhill crane habitat on Tyler Island in Sacramento County. This land will be managed to maintain its agricultural integrity while providing resources for sandhill conservation. So full final reports for any of our closed projects are available upon request. And thank you for your time, and I can take any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Shakya? Okay, I do have one. On the projects that are closed, the agreement amount, there's a parenthetical with money that was unspent. What happened to that unspent money?
It's a budget question. The money stay. We get a certain amount for the bond. We get the money back. So what happens is we have to, it goes back into what we say a pot, and we can reappropriate it at a later time.
And is that figure accounted for in the amount remaining to be allocated?
It would be one way or another, depending on if we've done it or not. Yeah, it's depending on if that has happened. We close the, like say, we close the purchase order, make it check, so it could
Pretty
fluctuate.
fluid. At this point, with
It's fluid.
Proposition 1, our expectation is that most of what would be left over would continue to support amendments into the future.
Okay,
If for some reason a major project did not move forward, we retain that money, then we would probably do a solicitation to receive a project to fund to expend those funds.
very good. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, thank you. Anybody online with any questions? No? Okay, we'll move on to item number 7, please, the Community Enhancement Grant Program update.
Good morning, board members. My name is Maya Garrett, and I'm the Conservancy's Ecological and Community Programs Analyst. I'm here to present Agenda Item 7, the Community Enhancement Grant Program Update, which can be found on page 40 of your agenda packet. The Community Enhancement Program is funded through a $12 million allocation from Proposition 68 and 2 general fund allocations of Climate Access and Resource, or CAR funds, totaling $11.4 million. The program accepts applications on an ongoing basis and is actively seeking proposals. At present, we are aware of several applicants working on the proposals. Currently, there is $2.8 million available in Proposition 68 funding and under $20,000 available in CAR funds. However, we are considering awarding $164,300 in Proposition 68 funds today. We currently have 13 active projects, 1 awarded project, and 1 closed project. The projects are detailed on pages 40 through 46 of your agenda packet. But to provide a highlight, the City of Pittsburgh began construction on the Central Harbor Park and Boat Launch Facilities Upgrade Project earlier this week. This could be a good opportunity for a site visit in the coming year. In addition, we have 1 proposal for consideration today, Agenda Item 8, the Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Acquisition Project. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Well, thank you. Any questions, comments? Any questions?
Just a comment. The Department of Finance had a wonderful opportunity with Delta Conservancy staff helping us to visit the Clarksburg Schoolhouse earlier this month. So I just want to say, I mean, it's a beautiful project. I know they're almost there, but wow, what a lift, right? To move that whole schoolhouse and completely retrofit it. So thanks to the team for help, managing to allow us to use the facility for a meeting, and it was a lovely opportunity to see some dollars at work. So just a thanks.
We were delighted to be able to support it, and hopefully we can have the whole board down to the schoolhouse for a board meeting at some point in the future, sometime next year.
That'd be great. Thank you, Director Croft. Any questions online, comments? Okay, seeing and hearing none. That concludes item 7. We'll move on to item number 8, consideration of award of Community Enhancement Grant Program funds for Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Acquisition Project.
Yeah. So in follow-up to the Community Enhancement Grant Program update, I'm pleased to present for board consideration Agenda Item 8, a recommendation to award Proposition 68 funding for the Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Acquisition Project to the County of Sacramento. This item can be found on pages 48 through 51 of your agenda packet. Conservancy staff recommends that the board approve up to $164,300 in grant funding for this proposal. The goals of Proposition 68 are to fund projects that promote recreation and tourism, historic and cultural preservation, and environmental education. The Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Acquisition Project meets the historical and cultural preservation goal. The purpose of this grant is to fund the acquisition activities for 3 properties in the town of Freeport. The Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Project is a 3-phase project that seeks to ultimately install 2 gateway monuments, a freestanding structure, and 1 interpretive sign in the unincorporated community of Freeport. The purpose of the project is to highlight Freeport as a Delta legacy community. This is the 2nd phase of a 3-phase project. Phase 1, the planning phase, was also funded by the Conservancy, and phase 3 is the construction of the monuments. This project is a project under CEQA. The County of Sacramento, as the CEQA lead agency, has prepared a notice of exemption, which will be filed should the Conservancy choose to fund this project. Once the county files their lead agency notice of exemption, staff will file a notice of exemption on behalf of the Conservancy as a CEQA responsible agency. Conservancy board members will not need to take any additional actions on CEQA for this project. This project is located in a severely disadvantaged community and is expected to support the community through increased awareness of the historical role of the Freeport community in the Delta. The County of Sacramento will contribute cost share for this project with an in-kind contribution of $21,587 to fund additional indirect costs incurred by the county. They've received over 20 support letters from the community businesses and organizations, and the first phase of the project also included community outreach. Our staff is pleased to recommend this project for board approval. There's suggested motion language at the bottom of the agenda item for your consideration, but before we proceed, I'm happy to take any comments or questions.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions? Any comments or questions online?
No, thank you.
Great. I'll say I'm very familiar with this project, obviously, as a Sacramento County representative. It's a great monument at the northern end gateway for the Delta. I haven't seen the final design in recent months, but hopefully they did away with this railroad spike that was kind of hanging up there like the sword of Damocles. Great homage, but not necessarily fitting into the overall design. But anyway. There's no further questions or comments. Does this require an action? It does.
So the suggested motion language, move that the board award funding up to $164,300 to the County of Sacramento from the Proposition 68 Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program for the Freeport Delta Gateway Monuments Acquisition Project.
Okay. Is there a motion toward that end?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, we'll count Director Burgess as the second. So I heard Director Pearl first. For roll call vote.
Here we go. Chair Hume,
Aye.
Vice Chair Winternitz,
Aye.
Supervisor Burgess,
Aye.
Supervisor Mashburn,
Aye.
down there. Ding is Supervisor Ding absent. Board Member Pearl.
Aye.
And Board Member Salmon.
Aye.
Board Member Udane.
Aye.
And Board Member Matsumoto. I'm sorry, I should have called you into roll call when you came in. So we're gonna record you as here, just a couple minutes after. So I'm gonna change that to here. So then I'm 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 8 ayes. The motion passes.
Would have been very odd to have an aye from somebody that was not present.
I don't have to note that on here because we go from 7 to 8 and it's like.
Glad to know the space-time continuum is still intact.
Uh,
Okay. That passes. Thank you very much. On to item number 9, the introduction to the Lean Six Sigma Board Packet Preparation Project.
Good morning, board members. My name is Sarah Lesmeister, and I'm the Ecological and Community Programs Manager here at Delta Conservancy. Today, I'm presenting before you an introduction and overview into the Lean Six Sigma process and the board package preparation project that we are working on. This is agenda item 9, and it can be found on page 52 of your board packet. So what is Lean Six Sigma? It sounds like a big, scary term. In short, it's a systematic and proven approach to identify and implement improvements to organizational processes. The lean component comes from the Toyota Corporation in the 1950s, where they use a set of tools and skills to improve efficiencies and reduce waste in their processes. The Six Sigma was created by Motorola Company in the 1980s, and it uses statistics, data analysis, and metrics to improve quality and reduce defects. So what does this mean? CalHR has been offering what's called Lean Six Sigma training courses that basically combine these two philosophies to train state employees in process improvements. The Lean Six Sigma training has been successfully adopted by numerous other state agencies. So as budgets and positions become more limited, it is expected that we as state entities do more with less resources. One way that this can be accomplished is through reducing inefficiencies in our existing processes. So as part of the Lean Six Sigma training course, which I am taking, participants must select a project to work on over the course of the training. We had several ideas for us to do here at the Conservancy, but one of the processes that we all agreed to was a board packet preparation project or process. So the Lean Six Sigma process has 5 main steps. There's the define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. We are currently in the analyze phase, during which we identify non-value and value-added activities. So value-added activities must meet 3 core criteria. 1, the step or the activity must be transformational. 2, it must directly contribute to what our customer wants. In this case, the board members, you guys, and also the public are our customers for our board packet. And 3, it must be done right the first time. So we at the Conservancy, we take a lot of pride in producing our board packet. It's a direct reflection of our work, and it's an opportunity for us to communicate with you, our board, but also the public in our accomplishments. However, our current board packet preparation process takes about 50 days for us to complete and is over 200 steps. In the training course, they said that's one of the most steps that they've ever seen in the process. Yeah, I'm going to share that and I actually showed that in figure 9.1. If you scroll down in the board packet a little bit, you can see the steps, and it's not meant to be read, but it just shows you all the different loops and steps that we go through. And the biggest part of that, and which I wanted to highlight, is that most of our current process consists of non-value added activities. So these steps are just a high amount of work for us as Conservancy staff, but they are potentially unnecessary for us to do. So our goal through this process is to continue to provide high quality, accurate, and useful information to you, our board, but also the public, while reducing the overall number of steps that we take and trying to get our preparation time to under 3 weeks. We have some legal requirements that we have to meet, which kind of constrict that to that 3-week timeframe, but that's what our goals are. We believe that with the efficiencies that are realized through this training, it will allow us to work on other high priority tasks directly related to our mission. We know that you, our board members, serve on numerous boards and are what we like to call the experts in board packets. So we are looking for your input on what you want and need in a board packet. So in the coming weeks, we will be reaching out to you for your thoughts and examples of board packets or materials that are exemplary or not. If you have also suggestions of stuff that doesn't work, that would be helpful for us as well as we work through our board packet preparation project. With that, I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Great. Questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment that I'm very happy that you're taking this approach, because anytime that we can simplify a process, that's always a good thing. So kudos to you.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments from our friends online?
I'm good.
Will your customers know the difference once success is achieved?
I think, right, you guys on our board are our main customers and also the public, so you may see some differences in the product that is being produced. But my goal or our goal is that the information and the quality and the content that you're receiving meets your needs and expectations. We, in this process, or when we're having these discussions, we create this beautiful board packet over 100 pages. Does that really meet your needs? Or do you just need a one-pager? I don't know. What are your needs? What are your desires? So you may definitely see some significant changes, or it could be very similar to what you have now. But that's why we'll be kind of reaching out to basically hear and get some feedback on what are your needs in the board packet and what would be really useful for you all to be successful. And also the public, right? This is a public product as well, where they can see what we're doing.
Ms. Allen.
Could I make a quick comment?
Please.
So as somebody who is brand new and having a fresh set of eyes, I would happily participate in this. And also I've been staff for a long time, so I know how much work goes into these. And now as the consumer, I'd happily be a part of it. So thanks for doing this project.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you. And I'll just echo the comments that finding the sweet spot of efficiency and efficacy is kind of always a goal. I didn't know that this was an issue. But when I look at that circuit board of a flow chart, I think there's a lot of room for improvement there, at least from what it looks like on the outside. Yes.
And I'd just like to add, I just really thank Sarah for taking this on. She's also going through extensive training because as you can imagine, that's part of what they provide And we're really hopeful that she'll be able to bring this skill to future processes when she figures out how to do the board packets, that we'll be able to look at other processes we do like invoicing and be able to streamline processes. So we're really excited about that.
Great. Any other comments for the good of the order? No? Godspeed and good luck. We look forward to the end product.
So we're hoping in January, or I expect to in January, to have some updates as well, and maybe some potential ideas of what that the board packet process, or at least package, could look like for you. So we'll be in the coming board meetings having fun.
Great, thank you.
Great.
Okay, that brings us then to item number 10, which is the update on reorienting to recovery Central Valley Salmon Recovery Project.
Al online? There he is.
Yeah, that's my presentation. Let me just share my screen. Thanks everybody for taking the time to hear our presentation. Sec. I will try to make this as quick as possible. Great. So just want to provide a quick project update and encourage folks to come to the workshop that we're having on the 29th of October and answer any questions y'all might have about the project. So this project has been going on since early 2021. In that first phase of work, we engaged a bunch of scientists to develop a salmon recovery definition framework. So basically, what would biological recovery of salmonids look like in the Central Valley? We borrowed pretty heavily from the NOAA BSP parameters, so abundance, productivity, spatial structure, and diversity, and kind of move beyond delisting to a broad sense recovery. In the next phase of work, we went out to folks across the Central Valley, your group included, and told everybody about the definition that we'd come up with, and then solicited input on socio and cultural economic values related to salmon recovery. And so then we use those biological objectives and those socioeconomic values to do a structured decision-making process where we developed a bunch of scenarios, ran them through different models, evaluated the results against the performance measures related to those biological objectives and socio-cultural economic values. So we are now at the end of phase 3, and we have a meeting on Thursday with the structured decision-making working group where we will be looking at a suite of balanced recovery actions and hoping that we can reach some kind of agreement on a suite of actions to move forward into next phase, which is as yet unfunded, but something that we've scoped out. So again, kind of the trajectory that we've been on, we started with those biological objectives. We solicited values. There was roughly about 550 unique value statements that we were able to pull in. We boiled those down to about 18 different values and 34 performance metrics. We took those performance metrics and figured out how they relate to the model inputs and outputs. Then we developed a suite of bookend scenarios where we kind of cranked the dials to 11, if you will. So we call those the 4 H's: habitat, harvest, hatcheries, and hydrology. And in that bookend scenarios, it was really about trying to understand how the models work. So it's kind of a model sensitivity. And what we found was that in isolation, cranking those dials didn't get us to recovery as we had defined it in phase 1. So in the next round, then we started blending some of those different knobs and were able to achieve recovery. And that was remarkable because we weren't sure if that was even possible going into this. And to our knowledge, that's the first time that anybody had shown, had modeled recovery at the Central Valley scale and shown it to be possible. So it was possible, but it was also came at some pretty steep costs. So in the next round, we refined those actions, and now what we're going to be sharing at that meeting on the 29th is the balanced recovery actions, where hopefully we've more equitably distribute some of the pains and gains associated with salmon recovery. So a quick preview, here are the 3 scenarios that we'll be discussing on the 29th. There's a tortoise scenario, which is kind of a dry year focused scenario. One of the big things that we found in the last round of modeling was you can have a lot of gains in wet years, and then if you get some ugly dry years, all those gains disappeared. So this is a scenario really focused at mitigating dry year losses. There's another scenario then that is the platypus scenario, where we kind of threw the kitchen sink at it. You'll notice this has the max habitat, which is basically everything short of flooding downtown Sacramento. And then we have an elephant scenario, which does not actually achieve recovery. This was based on using the habitat that's in the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes effort, and then building some other additional actions around that. It should be mentioned that the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes does not have the same goal that our project has. Our project, right, we defined recovery very specifically in that first phase. So this is a little bit of an apples and oranges comparison, but we thought it was worthwhile because it provides kind of another data point on a habitat gradient, if you will. So it could be incorporated into some of these other scenarios as an alternative to, say, max habitat. What would a scaled down habitat look like? And then that's a place for us to play a little bit to kind of fine tune, okay, how much habitat is the right amount of habitat in terms of trade-offs. So I don't want to use up more of your time. Happy to answer any questions, but kind of key takeaway here is that we hope you'll come to the meeting on the 29th to hear, dive into the results of those balanced scenarios, understand their impacts across the different biological objectives and socio-cultural economic values, performance metrics. This effort is only as good as the engagement that we get. So, if you're skeptical about this, I hope that you will come. We would love nothing more than for you to throw rocks at this and have the chance to engage in dialogue around it. I would much rather have folks come and heckle us than nobody show up at all. So please do come with good pointed questions. We would welcome that. Again, we'll be diving into those balanced scenarios. We'll also be talking about potential next steps. If there were to be a next phase of work, it would largely be focused on getting more watershed specific and looking at those actions. And then also kind of the beginning of implementation planning in terms of cost and paths towards funding and feasibility and uncertainty and those types of things. So that's my presentation. Happy to answer any questions folks can have and hope to see everybody on the 29th.
Great, thank you. Any questions or comments here in the room? From online, any questions or comments?
Well, I have one question, and I don't expect a long, detailed answer. And if that can't be provided, then just let me know. But basically, my question is, how does this work differ from, or maybe complements the established recovery plans for salmonids that may be already out there?
Sure. I think the very short answer is, we're aware that there's a lot of different plans in different places, and our goal from the start has been to kind of try to stitch those together like a quilt to cover maybe a broader, more landscape level scale than has been looked at previously, and go a little bit further towards recovery than I think maybe some other similar efforts have looked at in terms of they've maybe looked more at delisting. So I wouldn't say that we're replacing anything, but more just trying to make sense of all the different things that are happening in different places and pull them all together so that we can just get our arms around it all. Which again is kind of the point of why we modeled that Healthy Rivers and Landscape effort. Similarly, I think we've incorporated some of the bridge proposals that some of the commercial fishers had brought forward, and are open and eager to take a look at what's happening in every different place and then figure out, okay, what's the delta between that and what would be necessary to achieve recovery, and how could we fill that gap? That's kind of next phase of work.
But I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Quick question, is contacting the email on this slide the best way to learn more about the forum on the 29th?
Yes, and I believe that we sent out a little postcard with all the information and a calendar invite, but I'll make sure that we send that out again probably tomorrow afternoon to everybody who's in our database, and encourage folks to forward that to anybody else. The meeting on the 29th is open to everybody.
Okay, great. I'll either participate in that or want to talk to you offline. I'm pursuing a multi-benefit project on the Cosumnes River. And one of the hooks, if you will, pun intended, is to get local borrow of the material to remove some sediment so that we restore the gravel reds for the salmonid spawning. Quick question, would you repeat for me on the balanced scenarios, the delineators between tortoise, platypus, and elephant?
Sure. So in the shorthand, the tortoise is really aimed at mitigating dry year losses through functional flows and dry years, and that's, I would say, is the biggest kind of difference there. And then the platypus is more of a, kind of throw the kitchen sink at it. So, early indications from the SDM working group is that most people are falling in between those. And so there's probably, when we look to narrow this a little bit, there's probably an area between those two scenarios that, is going to be where we try to land and move things forward. And then there's the elephant, which is kind of based on the Healthy Rivers and Landscapes effort and with some additional actions, which does not achieve recovery as we defined it. I keep having to add that as we defined it because that's an important distinction.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? No, appreciate the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much for your time and hope to see you on the 29th. Take care all.
Item 10, now we're on to item 11, update on Nutria control activities in the Delta and Suisun Marsh.
Let's see Valerie Cook here.
She's right there.
Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So for those of you that I've not yet met, I'm Valerie Cook, CDFW's Nutria Eradication Program Manager. I really appreciate the opportunity to join you today and provide a more detailed update on our operations. I'm just going to speak through an update today, but I think for the sake of visuals and giving you guys something to sort of picture as I talk through this, I'm going to share my screen and a map of all the locations where Nutria have been taken to date. Is that coming through on your end? Okay, perfect. And this map is accessible through the department's Nutria webpage as well. So www.wildlife.ca.gov/Nutria will give you access to this interactive map so you can see year by year the locations and densities of Nutria taken. This is cumulative over time that we're looking at here. So I can try to give you another zoom in on the Suisun Marsh shortly. As of yesterday, a total of 5,274 Nutria have been taken in California. 1,216 of those have been taken so far this year. So compared to the last 3 years, and you'll see these numbers, the breakdown across years, you'll see the numbers provided in the summary that's in your board packet. My apologies, I don't know which page numbers those are in your packet, but if you compare to the last 3 years, in 2024, we've seen a notable spike in the number of Nutria detected and taken. So with the high flow events that California experienced 2 winters ago, we believe that Nutria were able to more easily disperse and be pushed into new locations. And what we're dealing with now is the resulting infestation that established in those areas. To date, 506 Nutria have been taken from Solano County. 166 of those were taken last year, with 340 of those taken this year. And I'll just do a quick zoom here so you can see the individual locations where Nutria have been taken in Suisun Marsh, Sherman Island, and those recent animals in Dutch Slough. So in 2024, the vast majority of our take has been centered in Suisun Marsh and Fresno County. In Fresno County, it's been from Mendota up the San Joaquin River to Millerton Lake. I'm just going to zoom right back out here. Of the 1,216 Nutria taken this year, I mentioned that 340 of those were from Solano County. 503 of those animals have come from Fresno County, which was the area in the Mendota vicinity where we had a delayed response. 328 of those Nutria came from Merced County, and the remaining animals were singles and teens taken from the other counties with infestations. We currently have 40 to 50 permanent and temporary field staff on the landscape, operating 7 days a week, year-round, monitoring roughly 500,000 acres of suitable habitat across a more than 2 million acre project area. So given the number of sites that we've been trapping and the volume of animals we've been taking, in this year we've been heavily focused on trapping. But now that waterfowl season is upon us, we're having to shift back out of those duck clubs where we're seeing the majority of our infestations in Solano and Merced counties. And that means we're going to be shifting our focus back to elsewhere in the Delta and the river corridors through our southern counties. I will also acknowledge that recent news has noted detections in Dutch Slough and Contra Costa County. There's been a lot of media flurry around the Contra Costa County aspect. But the reality is that these two animals that were taken were just across the county line from the Sherman Island area, where we've been taking animals in recent years. So we initially detected those Sherman Island animals in late 2022, and we have since taken 34 animals from Sherman Island. Recently, we did just get another detection of a pair of animals on Sherman Island, and we're gearing up to resume trapping in that area. A couple of other items worth noting is that we are still working on executing our Nutria scat detector dog contract with USDA to bring out detector dog teams from the now concluded Chesapeake Bay Nutria Eradication Project. The legal teams of USDA and California's DGS have been negotiating terms and conditions for federal to state agreements for the majority of this year. So there's been some pretty lengthy delays in any agreements between the state and USDA. So we just are checking in week by week to see when we can get that contract executed so we can get the detector dog teams back out on the landscape for ongoing and recurring detection efforts here. Our Judas Nutria project is also starting up again, and we're now working through a phased approach as we evaluate all the necessary improvements to handling, transport, husbandry, and processing to help us improve survival rates. After an initial trial housing period, we're now about to start tagging trials to evaluate the attachment materials and methods, determine retention times, and then proceed with sterilizations and deployment on the landscape. We do still expect to start deploying the first round of animals on the landscape by the end of this year with those new transmitters that we've received. So in a nutshell, we are making good progress, but we still have a several-year-long fight ahead of us. It's a positive thing that we're not seeing very dense and widespread infestations, but the fact that these groups are scattered requires a great deal of manpower as we are literally spread quite thin across the vast landscape. Additionally, the fact that we're battling infestations within properties that are managed for waterfowl hunting, which realistically are prime habitat that keep them fat, happy, and reproducing, is a major challenge for us. In these areas, we have very limited to no access during waterfowl season, which constrains our trapping operations to only about half the year at best. This is an ongoing issue that we've been facing, in Merced County for years, and is an issue that we're going to be struggling with in Solano County as well. And it's an issue that we're going to have to find collaborative solutions for moving forward in order to be successful. And then lastly, I think I will just note that like other agencies, we are facing state budget cuts, but the remaining grant that we have from the Delta Conservancy is allowing us to continue funding our additional limited term and temporary positions, which is preventing us from having to downsize the program's operations and which would really inhibit field operations and our abilities to address these populations on the landscape. And with that, if we have time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from here in the room?
No questions. I just want to say thank you to staff for coming down and educating the folks down in the Suisun Marsh, at least at the duck clubs about this issue. The more that you, because you have limited access during hunting season, the more you educate those landowners and those hunters to the problems that these critters are going to represent, the more of these hunters you're going to have who are willing to eradicate the nutria that they come across out there. You're going to have a lot more people in those areas and on those levees than would normally be out there. A lot more eyes. It's almost like having a little reserve army for you out there in those areas. And so if you educate them and they understand what the impacts are going to be to the environment that they enjoy, they're going to actively look for those nutria and help with eradication. So,
Yeah, I appreciate.
I was just going to follow up a question on that. Is it open season on nutria? I mean, those hunters that are out there, are they?
There are laws and regulations surrounding nutria hunting, and I can send over the summary for that. But generally, there is no depredation permit that is required. They can legally be taken by landowners. So these are regulated as not as fur bearers, but as non-game animals, and as rodents, they can be taken by landowners or by landowners' agents who have the landowner's permission. So hunters that are out on duck clubs have the ability. I'll say it is worth noting our concern with hunting has always been how very, very, very easy it is for folks, particularly inexperienced folks, to the issue with misidentification and people identifying muskrats, beavers, and otters as nutria. It would blow your mind the things that get submitted to us identified as nutria: house cats, raccoons. I mean, you name it, it gets reported to us as nutria. And the issue is that it is unlawful to take beavers in a certain portion of the year if you don't have a depredation permit. Otters also cannot be taken. So there are some legal concerns there, and concerns for impacts to native wildlife populations. But again, this ties back to the opportunity to provide that outreach and education and bring people up to speed, that if we can really help people hone in on the ability to identify, that really is going to work in our favor, because as I mentioned on those duck clubs, we're going to have to come up with a collaborative solution to be able to successfully eradicate. And then I see Steve's hand as well.
So I just want to thank you for all your efforts in the marsh. We do a spring and a fall landowner workshop, which we've had the Department of Fish and Wildlife make presentations, as well as utilizing our quarterly newsletter as well. It is difficult during waterfowl season as it gets wet, is access on levees. You don't want to damage the levees. And also most of the hunting clubs are concerned with disturbance, where if you have somebody going out checking traps every day, 7 days a week, it does affect the birds that are using the habitats and are allowed to rest. Typically, hunting only occurs Saturdays, Sundays, and Wednesdays, and the ponds are left undisturbed the rest of the days to allow the birds to utilize the habitat. So it's just trying to balance that. But I would say waterfowl season ends the first week in September. If you can have your teams strategically ramping back up, instead of being out of the marsh 6 months, maybe we can, cut it down to just the 3 months of waterfowl season and have them back on the ground in early February. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
Thank you for those comments. Yes.
How effective are the camera trap? You know, is that effective means of detection, or is it really boots on the ground?
Honestly, the camera stations are critical. They are at this point the most effective detection method that we have, because often, nutria, unless they're present in dense numbers, then we're often not going to be able to spot a track or a piece of scat or any damage that we can attribute specifically to nutria, because their vegetation damage and cuttings can look very, very similar to the same activity of muskrats and beavers. So cameras really give us a glimpse. If we can deploy a station for a few weeks at a time, that gives us eyes on the ground for weeks at a time, and we can deploy attractants to bring animals in front of those cameras. So we're much more likely to get detections of nutria with cameras than we are visuals. Much, much, much more likely to detect nutria in an area with cameras than we are with visuals. Typically, visuals are only going to be if we have dense numbers of animals there where there's an abundance of sign.
Okay, thank you.
Just have a comment.
Yes.
Ray Wiggins, Senior Environmental Scientist, Delta Conservancy. I wanted to flag to folks that are present that we have the Nutria, at Valerie's point about identification, we have the Nutria identification pocket guides that are on that table right outside as you're leaving the boardroom. And we have a lot of them, and I know the Stewardship Council also has a ton of them. So also feel free to take them for yourselves, but a handful, if you have a place you could distribute them. And then if you're online and you want some of those, feel free to reach out. We'll try to get you some.
So, Patrick, one last thing. When you guys are looking at outreach, and we're doing an education program in the Suisun Marsh for some landowners, that's great. If you really want to reach people, though, I can tell you that through the various social media platforms that there are out there, and I just know because I hunt ducks. There's don't hate. I'm kidding. There's several groups like on Facebook or Instagram or those different places. The one for Sacramento Valley Duck Hunters has 40,000 members. So when you reach out through those to those folks to educate them that this is an otter and this is a nutria, don't shoot these, shoot these. It will be much more effective, and you can reach a broader group of folks. Just throwing it out there. They're easy to join. I'm sure if they knew who you were and what you were about, they'd make a space for you to advertise or to put up something for all those hunters to see. So anyway, just sharing it. It's a great platform, a great way for you to reach out to a lot of eyes.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, ma'am.
Great, thank you. Anything else on this item? All right, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Now we'll move on to item number 12, which is State DWR Multi-Benefit Restoration Program update.
I don't believe Charlotte is with us today.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 13, the Delta Stewardship Council update.
Well, I think I'm gonna start with, once we get settled. We have two updates for you today. First, Amanda Bull, Special Assistant for Planning and Science at Stewardship Council. First, I'm just gonna be providing some general updates for the council, and then Megan Thompson and I are gonna present our tribal and environmental justice issue paper that was recently released. So in terms of the council, we do have a council meeting tomorrow. It's a fairly light agenda. We'll be meeting at Resources Agency. We'll be having a panel on levies. And so if you're able to tune into that, please do. On Monday, we have a Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee meeting, and many of the agencies that are here and online are members of DPIC. We're going to be meeting down at Bogle Vineyards because we're going to be focusing on levies at that meeting as well. We have several panels with a number of experts. Campbell will be participating in the morning, kind of walk and talk up to, we're going to be walking up to the top of the levee that's behind Bogle to hear about the work they've been doing along Elkhorn Slough. And then really the point of this meeting is to really just kind of elevate the importance of levees in the Delta, that, they are the backbone of the Delta, and that we really can't further the COAPL goals without a sound levee system. So if you're able to participate in that, please join us. We will not be live streaming that meeting since we're going to be outside
But it's promising to be a lovely day in the Delta. So, you know, there are worse ways to spend your day. So, and then just the final update is that we are still working on our Delta Adapts adaptation plan document. We're hoping to release that soon. I think we'll probably make sure that we can provide an update on that once that's out, but be looking for that soon. So, and I think any questions, just general questions around Stewardship Council activity?
Any questions? Any questions online? No, thank you.
Great. So with that, I'll transition to our tribal and environmental justice issue paper, and I'm going to attempt to.
Item 14 for the record.
Sorry, thank you. I'm going to attempt. Well, just as we're waiting for that, I will just mention, so with me today is Megan Thompson, who's an environmental scientist in our planning division. And, you know, we're excited to be presenting our public review draft of our tribal and environmental justice issue paper. This paper is the culmination of 3 years of work by many current and former council staff members and fellows, and represents staff's kind of evolving understanding of tribal and environmental justice in the Delta, as well as our recommendations on how the Stewardship Council can better conduct its work through these lenses. And so Megan and I are going to present a brief overview of the process we undertook to develop the paper. Let's see. Oh, great. Okay, now I just need to get back to my notes. Okay, there we go. Great. All right. Let me just catch up with myself. So yeah, we're going to provide a brief overview, just at a very high level, walk through the paper, sharing the key components, and then outline kind of the next steps for finalizing the paper. And I do want to apologize in advance for reading so much of this presentation. There's a lot of information to cover, and we just really want to make sure that we get it all out. And I also want to thank you for giving us a little bit more time to do this, because there's a lot to share. All right. So the Council's 2019 5-year review identified environmental justice as a key emerging issue, noting a specific need for more information and analysis to inform future actions. So with all of this in mind, 3 objectives set, which you can see here on the screen. The geographic scope of this paper is what is considered the legal Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta. Staff, however, does recognize that tribes and tribal communities view the legal delta as an artificial construct. This paper is not a full exploration of all tribal and EJ issues in the watershed and how tribal and EJ issues manifest both upstream and downstream of the delta, which is a topic deserving rigorous study, but was beyond the scope of this particular paper. Furthermore, when staff began this initiative, we identified a need to delineate between EJ as a whole and EJ issues as they relate to tribes and tribal communities, which we refer to as tribal justice within the paper. All right, so to understand tribal and environmental justice, the paper follows the conceptual framework before you in this graphic. This graphic summarizes the 3 interrelated tenets of representation, process, and distribution used in the paper to build a holistic understanding of environmental justices and injustices in the Delta. And so we'll be referencing this framework later in our presentation when we present current issues and recommendations. So as I mentioned, this has been a 3-year effort and has incorporated several modalities of research, including background research, public comment analysis, 22 interviews, public outreach, tribal engagement, and the formation of an EJ expert group. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all these right now, but I'm happy to answer questions at the end. So for the next several slides, we're going to present key components of the issue paper, providing, again, just kind of the primary takeaways. We won't go over each section of the paper, as you can see here in the table of comments, but rather touch on the highlights. Right. So first, to help us understand the context in which we're attempting to address tribal and environmental justice in the Delta, we really felt that it was important to include a robust history section, which is found in section 4. Key to this is acknowledging tribal history. Native people have been part of the Delta ecosystem since time immemorial and view the entire watershed as one interconnected and culturally sacred system. The Delta landscape, however, has been radically transformed from an indigenously managed marshland to industrial agriculture and a freshwater conveyance system by settlers and government, which set into motion many injustices that still shape the region. These have been complex and interdependent social, ecological, economic, and engineering developments, and have included the Swamplands Act, levee building, redlining, as well as our freshwater or water infrastructure that we know today. In section 5 of the paper, we address current tribal and environmental justice issues in the Delta. So input from different sources that informed this paper led us to identify procedural, representational, and distributive justice issues. And these, again, are the 3 tenets of environmental justice that I mentioned earlier. Issues related to procedural justice included, for example, concerns that government agencies are often only trying to check a box when they do outreach, unfamiliarity with issues and how to engage in government processes, inaccessible meeting times and locations, and limited resources and funding as key barriers to meaningful involvement in Delta governance. Issues related to representational justice included, for example, the need to truly understand which communities are most impacted by environmental harms, and creating a place at the table for tribal and environmental justice community members to be able to fully participate in Delta governance. For distributive justice issues, we identify and discuss 7 key overarching distributive issue areas: water, flooding, climate change, pollution and public health, housing and homelessness, food security, and recreation and outdoor access. And so I'm going to start by presenting a summary of the tribal justice issues, and then we'll move on to the distributive justice issues. Because tribal communities have their own experiences, I will be addressing all 3 tenets as they relate to tribal justice. For context, today there are over 109 federally recognized tribes in the state, as well as non-federally recognized and many Native American people, both within and outside the current legal Delta, all have ancestral ties to the Delta watershed. Many tribes actively consult with local, state, and federal government processes to exercise and advance their priorities and seek recognition and redress for the environmental injustices enacted against them through time. So tribal justice is the advancement of equity for tribal nations, Native communities, and Indigenous communities, with the understanding that tribal sovereign rights, traditions, and cultures have been affected by environmental and other impacts. So a variety of tribal justice issues were discussed and identified. And so at a high level, these include, again, recognitional injustices rooted in the lack of tribal priorities or sovereignty of federally recognized tribes by federal and state government agency representatives. Recognitional injustice is also expressed in the non-recognition of traditional knowledge, including Indigenous land management practices, languages, and ceremonies. Procedural justice issues related to the disregard or disrespect of tribal representatives and the marginalization of their expertise, as well as the exclusion of specific groups such as non-federally recognized tribes from engagement in processes. And finally, distributive justice issues facing tribal and Indigenous communities include, for example, water contamination, which affects water used for ceremony and fish harvested for consumption. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over to Megan, who is going to go over the rest of the distributive justice issues and then also the recommendations in the paper.
Next slide. Thank you, Amanda, and hello, Chair Hume and Conservancy members. So I'm going to go through the distributive justice issues and recommendations, as Amanda said. So water EJ issues take many forms, including water supply and management, such as injustice with water rights systems and Delta water conveyance. Another water quality issue is also such as harmful algal blooms, and then also water affordability is another example. So this is an example of drinking water insecurities. So as an example, as of April this year, 11 drinking water systems are failing human right to water standards, and 27 are at risk of failing. Other key issues that came up are concerns about allocations of levy investments, flood insurance access and affordability, and land use planning as key distributive injustice related to flood risks. So certain Delta communities are disproportionately vulnerable to climate change related hazards, such as the increasing flood risks in Stockton due to climate change. Next slide. Past land use decisions and redlining practices have placed certain communities in closer proximity to pollution sources, which has led to disproportionate exposure to pollutants in these areas and resulted in long-term health impacts like asthma. Research has consistently demonstrated that historically redline areas, including in the Delta today, experience greater vulnerability to a variety of environmental hazards than in non-redline areas. There is also currently an uneven and equitable access to recreational areas and open space or green space across the Delta, which has resulted in impacts to public health and well-being. Next slide. Other key issues are deeply interrelated, such as the rising cost of housing and the cost of living across the region. For example, the 2023 Delta Resident Survey found that a quarter of Delta residents reported household incomes of $50,000 annually, and affordability of basic needs such as housing, food, utilities, and transportations are key challenges to their well-being. This correlates with the rising number of in-house people, for example, and the lack of adequate sanitation resources for the in-house, which is also a violation of human rights and dignity. Finally, closely related are issues of food security and access. So for example, there are 4 Delta counties that have higher rates of food insecurity than the state average. Next slide. So you just heard about a diverse set of issues that came up in the process, some of which are beyond the council's authority to address. Now we're going to move on to our recommendations, which can be found in section 2 of the paper. So part of the council's role as an agency and in writing the paper was to document all tribal and EJ issues that communities are grappling with in the Delta. The recommendations include both the general recommendations, which are relevant to the agencies in the Delta, and a more in-depth list of recommendations that are specific to the council. Next slide. Here's our general recommendations list at a high level. 1, invest in relationships and build trust. This demonstrates agency commitment. 2, work through trusted community partners, meaning tailor outreach to meet unique needs of the community you're working with. 3, be intentional and justice-oriented, such as recognizing that these communities have often been left out of planning and policy conversations in the past, and understanding that building trust may take a while. 4, make it easy to participate in your process. 5, follow through. This can be done by being transparent about how feedback will be used, and then follow up on how it's incorporated. 6, enhance connections. Agencies can work to be more coordinated to reduce community fatigue. And then 7, identify and fill research needs to help with decision making. This includes topics of emerging concerns such as harmful algal blooms. Next slide. Now to our council-specific recommendations. Goal 1 works to integrate EJ into the council. This starts with memorializing council commitments to EJ through resolution and actions to create a more inclusive workplace. We also note the need to improve our spatial understanding of the California EJ communities affected by Delta and statewide management. So for example, this is a screenshot here of the Council Social Vulnerability Index that we developed as part of our climate adaptation work. It has been a great baseline for understanding community vulnerability, but has limitations, but also can be built out from. And then lastly, the goal also addresses various ways to improve tribal and EJ representation in the Delta governance and develop new partnerships, partnership models between government tribes and CBOs. Next slide. Goal 2 focuses on tribes. Some of the supporting actions include engaging in partner agency efforts around tribal access and use of the Delta. This might look like co-management or protecting tribal data. Other supporting actions are continuing to provide cultural humility trainings to council members and staff, interweaving traditional knowledge with the Delta Science Enterprise, and to continue improving consultation by engaging early and often, as well as regularly evaluating our tribal consultation policy. Next slide. Goal 3 is about further community engaged research, partnerships, and helping communities meet their research needs. We support community engaged research that centers on community needs and desires by including tribes and EJ practitioners in the council's Council's Delta Social Science Community of Practice and into our Science for Communities program, which pairs community organizations with scientists to collaborate on projects together. Safeguard Tribal data ownership is another need. We propose developing a council data management protocol to ensure tribal members understand how information they share will be used and to guide council staff in handling the data responsibly. Another important component of this goal is to improve communication and distribution of science in the Delta through good communication practices and transparency. We can make council-sponsored research data publicly available where possible and use the council communication resources to share information about climate change risks directly to Delta communities. Next slide. The final goal is to focus on addressing funding inequities in the Delta in our own science funding process. We will support equitable investments in the Delta communities through guiding funding to tribes and EJ communities where possible, such as through exploring a climate justice technical assistance program to help Delta communities prepare for and adapt to climate change, and supporting Delta-specific legislation appropriations that are targeted towards EJ and tribal communities. For a science and funding process to make it more equitable, we propose developing a proposal evaluation criteria for EJ communities to help applicants and reviewers consider how EJ issues should be integrated into research. And lastly, evaluating opportunities to dedicate Delta science funding for tribal and EJ research. All right, I'm now going to pass it back to Amanda.
Great, thanks, Megan. So just briefly, what's next? So the draft paper is currently out for a 60-day public review period, which ends on November 4th, as well as a tribal consultation period, which will end in early December. Last week, we hosted an in-person and virtual tribal roundtable and to receive feedback from tribal members. And then during this public comment period, we're also conducting additional community outreach. This fall, we plan to join events in Stockton, Sacramento, Walnut Grove, Lodi, and West Sac to continue to connect with Delta community members. And then our intention is that the community concerns and ideas that we hear from this outreach will be considered along with others. Also, we've translated the executive summary and some info sheets into Spanish, which are available on the website. And then our plan is to bring a final back to the council early next year for endorsement. So with that, we're both happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Okay, thank you. Questions here in the room? Comments? Yeah, Dorothy,
Yeah,
Pearl.
more of a comment. I appreciate the work that's being done on this. I know many of our commissions, conservancies, councils are all working towards trying to figure out how we can better integrate and engage our tribal partners. And I know some of our entities are having better success than others. And I think some of that is sort of dependent on location and sort of the areas in which, regions in which, folks are kind of overseeing. But I just want to commend the council for taking this on. I know this continues to be obviously a very large, high priority for the administration, and seeking ways in which we can continue to engage our tribal partners. And I think one of the keys that you said several times, and we would agree, is in a meaningful way and in an ongoing manner in which it's not that we just seek them when we're trying to work on one project or another, but we're actually having a collaborative conversation in an ongoing and systematic way. And so I appreciate all the hard work and look forward to continuing to kind of see how this progresses. So.
Any other comments in the room? How about online? Anybody? Hands online? Yes.
One quick comment. Just want to thank the Stewardship Council for all their work on this and for their request of our input through time. And then I also think it is a great body of work that will help all of the Delta agencies moving forward. This document to support our work as well as the Delta Protection Commission and anyone working in the Delta. So,
and that really has been our intention. And just one more comment in terms of the history section. We have a very strong science component. Research is very important to us, and so we really did feel strongly staffed that we really needed to put time into kind of researching and understanding these issues, and not just put out a set of recommendations. So thank you. And so yeah, please, if as you have time to research it or read the paper, we'll love to hear any comments you have as well.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. Appreciate it. That brings us, I believe we're going to skip item 15. Correct. Due to Mr. Blodgett's absence, but now we're on to item 16.
Sure, is Carrie Buckman or anyone?
We have.
Janet
Janet.
Barbieri.
Great.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Thank you. And yeah, my name's Janet Barbieri, and I'm stepping in for Carrie Buckman. She had a conflict this morning, so I'm here to give her update, just a couple of really quick things on the permitting efforts for the Delta Conveyance project. A couple of notes. One is that we're continuing to work on the California Endangered Species Act and expect an ITP from the Department of Fish and Wildlife sometime in November. Continuing to work on federal ESA with those biops expected, one for operations probably in December and the other for construction in early 2025. On the water rights side of things, we have a change in point of diversion process that's ongoing. We have had 2 pre-hearing conferences so far. There's another one in December. We do think the dates are shifting, but we don't have new information on that right now. And then I also wanted to mention the certificate of consistency with the Delta plan that we submitted to the Delta Stewardship Council. And this was specifically for proposed geotechnical activities. And this is in response to a court ruling. And so we're trying to be responsive to what the judge has requested. And so that has been submitted. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we have also put out for the community benefits program for the Delta Conveyance project, kind of the next click on that. We took the framework document that was a part of the EIR. It was an appendix to the EIR. And we have published now for public review and comment a draft implementation plan and guidelines. And that document has more detail in it about how that program might operate. And it really is kind of just suggestions. We're looking for public review and input. We'd really like to hear what people have to think about what those, possible ways of, managing that program might look. So there is a feedback form online, and happy to speak with anyone about it, and would really encourage folks to encourage members of the public to get in there and take a look at it when they have a chance. The deadline for that is not for a long time, not until March 1st. So we wanted to give folks a lot of time to be able to get in there and take a look at that. So that's it for me. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions? How about online? All right, thank you, Janet. That takes us to item 17. Agenda items.
Yeah, but maybe we should just do one more quick call to see if Charlotte Biggs was able to join us.
I don't have information on that, I'm sorry.
No worries. Okay, so this is an opportunity to really hear from board members about anything that they would particularly like us to cover in future meetings. One thing I'll note from the staff report is that we will have our Delta Conservancy 2024 implementation plan status update and consideration of the 2025 implementation plan at our January meeting next year. Highlight all the work that we've done as well as what we intend to do in the coming years.
Great.
That's it.
Thank you. Okay. Now, item 18 is an additional public comment opportunity. We did have a public comment opportunity at the beginning of the agenda. Seeing and hearing none brings us to item 19, the favorite part, adjournment.